Naruto Gaiden. Now, in my efforts to catch up on all things Boruto, I was going around reading all the different manga that have come out, all these little one-shots where I'm like, alright, I kind of read this, I didn't know that existed, going through and doing a bunch of stuff. I realized that Naruto Gaiden was one of the mangas that came out because basically Boruto, Sarada, and Mitsuki all have individual stories. And I believe Boruto's story was actually just the full film before the manga came out. I thought he had like his own one-shot manga. Technically, he had like the Road to Boruto manga, which I feel like that was more about Himawari than it was about him because it revealed that she has a Byakugan at a young age. But this is for Naruto Gaiden. This one actually focused on Sarada, which I thought was pretty cool. And I realized as I was going through it, I didn't even read it again. I actually just went on YouTube to look at like where people do like the motion comic stuff, and I just looked at a couple of them at 2 times the speed. Like, okay, I did read this. I didn't remember a lot of the imagery because it was 2 effing years ago. That was like the first one that came out was actually for Sarada, unless there was another one that I have yet to see. But I'm pretty sure that was the first manga that came out after the official story ended, and I didn't realize that it was Naruto Gaiden. I never realized that it was called that. I was just like, these are just the extra chapters, I'm just reading them because it's, showing the kids in the future. And it doesn't show a ton of Boruto, oddly enough. It actually focuses a lot more on Sarada and Chocho, because they're kind of just hanging out in this, where it's like Chocho doesn't think, I don't know, she doesn't think that Choji is her dad, so she's just like, alright, we gotta find my dad. They go on, it's almost like a road trip sort of thing, because they start off with one mission, and then it becomes like this huge, crazy, balls to the wall sort of mission, because they end up basically teaming up with Naruto, running into Sasuke. Sakura has to chase them down, because now they're facing off against some random kid who has Sharingan, and then it goes into like even crazier stuff with like somewhat, Akatsuki again, and then we find out that this kid is basically like clones of one person, and they all have the Sharingan, which is like the real Sharingan. It's not like the Rinnegan sort of deal, where it's just put into different bodies. It's like, nope, all these kids individually have this power, and it's just a crazy sort of story. And it was a really good story. I remember reading it, and like I said, I went through, and I was going through images, like, okay, characters, imagery, umbilical cords, got it. So going from, and I'm kind of doing this off the cuff is what I remember, because I really didn't want to reread the whole story, because I'm like, I do remember the main points of what happened, and I enjoyed it. And it starts off where it's like, basically the examination for the kids is kind of how it starts off, as they're going into fully becoming ninja. And then it goes into, just like I said, this weird sort of side story almost about Chocho, where it's like, yeah, Choji's not my dad. I gotta find my real dad. Sarada, why don't you come along? And so that's how they start on this, adventure. And it's a simple adventure at first, and then it just explodes into just like sheer madness, with Naruto going in and kind of teaming up with the girls, and Chocho is like losing her mind over Naruto because he's so cool, and he's like revealing his cloak and stuff like that, and he's saving their lives, and he's looking super badass. So she's just like falling for him, and they both kind of get crushes on Naruto a little bit, because like the Hokage now is actually like super cool. He's not just the Hokage. So I always thought that was pretty funny. We do get to see Sasuke, and we get to see him in action a little bit, but it really focuses a lot on Naruto as far as the action, and Sarada as well, and her story, her developmental story, really, as she goes through kind of discovering who her parents truly are, and how she really feels about, her parents' relationships with her, and also their relationship with each other, because Sasuke is like, in a sense, much like Naruto, where, it starts off with Boruto kind of having his dad sort of play tag with him and stuff, just to have some interaction with his father. That's kind of how it is with Sarada, although she doesn't have the same feelings. It's kind of like she's a bit more okay with it, but Sasuke is kind of just always gone. Like, for her, it's almost like he's just never there at all. So I was like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting, the way they kind of parallel their stories, but they have different emotions, and they take it in different strides. So we get to see her kind of go through that, and of course there's the big thing where, a lot of people, and I remember when this was actually happening, when the manga came out, people were like, is she not actually Sakura and Sasuke's daughter? Is she actually Sasuke and Kanin's daughter? And they kind of tease that a bit, because of the fact that she finds this umbilical cord in Kanin's room, or like her medical room or whatever. And so Sugetsu does the DNA test, and it's like, oh yeah, it turns out that this is, your DNA actually matches Kanin, so yeah, you're actually her daughter and not Sakura's, and you've been raised by this woman who's not even your mother, and your dad took off, and your real mother, just for whatever reason, didn't raise you. So that's kind of how that plays out, and Naruto overhears that, so he doesn't realize what the truth is. And it takes a minute before all that goes through, although it was revealed, because I think it was because Boruto the movie was coming out around the same time, or it was about to come out after this manga. It had already been revealed that Sarada was actually Sasuke and Sakura's daughter, but if you didn't know that extra bit of information, then it was still a mystery until like way to like the last chapter where Soigetsu ends up being yelled at by Kari, where she's like, no, I kept that as like a memory because I helped deliver this baby. So I kept her umbilical cord and like, my fingerprints and all my DNA, but it was all over that junk when I touched it. And it's been there forever. So like, of course my DNA is mixed in with hers because I like held on to the umbilical cord. So I was like, okay, that explains why that happened in the past. But it didn't matter by that point for Sarada. Like, she didn't get that official answer. For her, it went from like this really dramatic thing where it's like, she felt like she was kind of living a lie and stuff, to getting to the end where she activates the Sharingan, which is cool, and then she uses not only the Sharingan of her father, but the strength of her mother, and she's able to kind of help things sort of end because she's like super hardcore. She's actually a pretty awesome character from like the little I've seen her as far as action wise in this, and if you play like the last Naruto game, if you have that character, she's really sweet in that. Like, she uses a lot of like I don't know if they use this actually in the manga or not, but she uses a lot of Sasuke's like lightning abilities and stuff. So she mixes like all of his lightning techniques, his lightning elemental attacks, with Sakura's strength and stuff, and it's actually super freaking sweet to watch her fight. I'm like, that is an amazing combination to mix Sasuke's I forgot the actual lightning style or whatever they call it, or lightning nature, I believe is what it is. I forgot what the heck they call the different things, but lightning chakra nature, I do believe is the name, and then mixing that with just Sakura's sheer strength and ability, it's just actually kind of awesome seeing her fight. So, this is kind of like our first taste of that, and that was pretty cool. Chocho's adventure kind of it's just like the silly thing. I like her character. She's really funny. I've liked her in the anime so far, and what little I've seen of her from like the old Boruto movie, which is like the first couple of chapters of the manga as well, I think she's really funny. So I liked her. I loved her character all throughout this. She's really silly. Sarada, of course, being the super serious character, she's just, just like her dad. It was really good. She took it, she's serious, but, she's able to kind of look at things clinically. She's not, like, depressing like Sasuke, because her whole clan wasn't wiped out, but she is more serious like he is, but she's able to see things more like a normal person. She's kind of, like, riding that fine line between being a little too serious and just being, like an average person. But I like that with her character, and the development that they did with her as she goes through, and it's like, the relationship kind of ultimately comes together. It's like, are we really a family? And it's like, yeah, and we really love you, and you're really a part of us because we made you, and we care about you. And she she tears up and stuff, and everything's great. The family's together. She realizes Sakura cares about her, and it's like, it doesn't matter if she's not really my mom. She kind of like the raised you versus the biological thing, like nature versus nurture sort of thing. Who raised you is your mother or father, compared to just that's the person that gave birth to me. So ultimately, she doesn't need, the official answer, DNA tests and all that stuff. It's just, this is my family, and I'm happy with that. And of course, she awakens the Sharingan by the end too, so that was pretty cool. But ultimately, it was pretty cool. We get to see, this is like our first, considering this was like the first chapter that ever came out after the series ended. This was like where we first see Naruto as the Hokage, so that was a big deal. We see pretty much all the characters in their full adult forms, because even with like the last movie, that was before this chapter took place, so that's like they're older, but that's before they actually have the kids, so they're in different costumes, but it's still not the same costumes, and it's not the same positions in life and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool, and we see like the full adult versions of pretty much every character, or maybe not every character, but a lot of the characters. Shino shows up in the very beginning of this. Shikamaru is in there, adult version of him. We see his son and Boruto and how they interact. So we see a couple of the characters. There are a lot of characters that are mentioned, like when Naruto's talking to Chocho, and it's like, you look just like your mother, but your body weight is like almost a mirror image of Choji when he was your age and stuff like that. So it was kind of funny how they go through it, and we see some of the older versions of the characters and stuff. But it was definitely a good manga. Like I said, of course, with this not being the full detail of every single chapter, me remembering every single detail. Like, I don't even remember the name of the villain, because like I said, that was 2 years ago, and I really skimmed through it just to be like, okay, I read this, and I do remember a lot from it, just like the biggest points. But it was pretty good. And of course, this is something that I have to assume eventually, if it's not already being implemented, has to be in the Boruto manga. These were like, I don't even remember how many clones there were, but they all had the Sharingan. It was like, alright, Naruto being Naruto, it's like, well, we're still talking about kids. We can't like just wipe them all out, which he and Sasuke could totally do. So that's how we end up seeing Kabuto in the future, where he's running that school that they mentioned in the later part of the series. So he ends up taking all these clones in, all the young boys. It's like, you can basically just call me Dad. My name is Kobuto or Kabuto. I don't know, it's Kobuto. But it was really cool. I was like, okay, so that's where we get to see him having the school and stuff, and he takes these young boys in. So at some point, I assume that that's going to have a big factor to do. Like, I hope they don't forget, at least. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I would assume that a buttload of freaking, boys having the Sharingan does come into play in the Boruto manga at some point. Like, it just has to, because it's like, you got these kids over here who use quite a few abilities. Like, they were using some MS and stuff like that. And I think they made an even brand new version in this. Like, they just always got something whipping out for Sharingan eyes. And yet somehow the Byakugan is supposed to be stronger. I always think of that as like, man, they got like 18 million versions. I have yet to see the Byakugan make like a portal to teleport or make infinite fire or trap people in their own memories and stuff like that. Yet to see that. I can look through a tree and I can hit you with some pressure points. But I've yet to see someone make like a full suit of like chakra armor, all that stuff. We need to see some more Byakugan stuff. Maybe that'll happen in this, who knows. The Boruto manga, I mean. But this is definitely a good set of chapters. A great first start. And, this is 2 years ago when they did this, but that was definitely a great introduction. And it's something, I'm kind of glad I went through it again, because I was like, this is actually a really good start, or kind of prequel to get going into like the Boruto manga and where it leads up to, where it's like, okay, we see the kids when Sarada activates her Sharingan. We have the movie for Boruto with his abilities. We have the one-shot chapter for Mitsuki, where we get to see like his ultimate power, which is Sage Mode. So we got Sage Mode, Sharingan, and of course for Boruto, it's really just him having like the Rasengan and just being strong. And then they kind of added a new ability for him in the manga with whatever this eye ability is going to be. So it's like, okay, they basically gave him a new ultimate ability, because Mitsuki has Sage Mode and Sarada has the Sharingan. And Boruto was kind of like, well, I mean, he has the Rasengan, but anybody can do that. So they had to give him some extra special technique that's unique to his character. And, now we have, all three of the members have their own special little move that they can pull out in the future, which I'm sure we'll see way, way down the line. But I thought it was a good set of chapters. I wanted to do this just as a thing. This is like before I was really reviewing the manga or anything like that. So that's why I never reviewed it way back when I actually first read it. But I wanted to do this because I'm getting into Boruto, and I believe I am officially caught up. I read the Road to Boruto. I read the first chapter, which I already did that review, and I did the Mitsuki review. This being Naruto Gaiden, I've done Boruto, the movie, done the last. I'm currently watching the anime, so I believe I am officially caught up with all the in-between manga that have been released, not counting like the Sasuke Gaiden stuff, and I know there are some other light novel stories. Those I'll probably leave behind, just because it's like, that's just random stuff. Like, that also was leading into it, but those are also like light novels, and I don't believe they have manga adaptations to them. They do have some anime versions, like the last couple episodes, like the last 10 episodes of the Shippuden anime. Some of those episodes are from the light novels. I think all of those are actually light novel stories. So the Sasuke stuff, the Shikamaru stuff as well. So those two, I think, are just straight up adaptations of those light novel stories. And I might go back and watch those episodes, but they're almost like, they're just little arcs. They're not like really crucial to like the next generation of characters. It's just basically the next generation, but we still get to see what the older characters are doing instead of focusing on the next generation. So not too hard pressed to actually go check those out just yet, but I think I'm caught up. I'm ready. I'm definitely ready to get into the Boruto manga and get to like whatever this new main story is. I want to figure out who this villain is. I want to see these new powers and what the deal is with Boruto's ability. So I think I'm finally caught up, which I'm super happy about. But of course, even though this is super old, we'll love to know your thoughts on this special chapter. It was like the first special chapter that we had after the series ended, focusing on the next generation of the kids and relations and things like that. So I would love to know your memories on this chapter now compared to back when you first read it. Did you hate it then, but you like it now? Like it in general, like it then, hate it now. We'll let you know how it's kind of changed over time for you. For me personally, I think it's just still really good. I think it was a great introduction to the next generation, especially focusing on Sarada. And it's kind of interesting that the first really big focus was on her because the movie was already coming out. So I was like, well, we got Boruto, so let's make the manga focus on her. And if I remember right, the manga ended up coming out first, so the first big thing really focused on Sarada. So it was kind of interesting in that regard. And I could have my timing all off, but I do believe Boruto came out after the Sarada, the Naruto Gaiden stuff did. And then after Boruto, that's when the Mitsuki thing came out, where we got the revelation about him, because it was revealed in the movie that he was Orochimaru's son. So it's like, all right, let's kind of answer some questions here and how that plays out. And that was pretty cool too. But like I said, we'd love to know how this is kind of, how you kind of perceive this, since it's about 2 years old at this point and we're now officially into the Boruto manga. How you think it stands up to where we are with the story and how they introduce the character and the elements, especially of these clones with the Sharingan. How you guys think that'll eventually play into the main story of Boruto, because you got like dozens of kids who now have the Sharingan, all of which could, I would assume, technically go out and spread the Sharingan if they have children and stuff like that, as long as they don't all get killed off in some new great ninja war with this new main villain, whoever he may be. But we'd love to know your thoughts on this, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.